What's up guys, infinityJKA and welcome back to another YouTube video. In today's video I'm going to be creating a tier list for the new ultimate difficulty in Bipole 4 Liberation of Xuir. This difficulty was added in the new 2.0 update and the meta was changed pretty drastically in this difficulty, so I think it's deserving of its own tier list. While you can technically do the Xuir route and the genocide route in the ultimate difficulty, it's not really what the ultimate difficulty was meant for, and it's not based around it, so I won't be ranking any of these characters. And also, these 5 characters are not obtainable in the ultimate difficulty. You do not have Crest, Rama, or Xian, and you cannot recruit Xuir Man form or Integer, since you can't get the true ending since you don't recruit these two. So they will not be ranked either. And as well as that, the non-playable characters won't be ranked, of course, and I hopefully ordered these correctly from memory, but we'll be going in order of recruitment. So first of all, we have Proton Xuir, the protagonist of the game. You gotta keep him still alive. In ultimate difficulty, you kind of can't really kill him since you'll get a game over. And at the beginning of the game, he is like your tank. Actually, not just the beginning of the game, but in this mode, he will be your tank. He has the highest defense by 4 out of the starting characters, and the later characters that you get aren't very tanky at all until like Helio, but even then, at that point, Proton will probably have better defensive stats, so he is extremely important. You have to keep him alive and use him anyways, and again, just S tier unit, similar to the base game, but in this mode I feel like he's even more important since your other units that you start with are really bad. Okay, next off we have Theme Teleporter first. So he's a bit difficult to rank since he's really important at the first like 3 or 4 chapters of the game. Like, you aren't going to beat the boss fight against the mercenaries, or not the mercenaries, but the Guild of Retool without him, because you do need a dodge tank, and unless you level the heck out of him and got really good growth, you're not dodge tanking that many hits. And he is really important at the beginning, but he doesn't really have much use later on. But since he is so important at the beginning of the game, I am giving him an A tier. You kind of need him to beat the beginning of the game, but after that he is not very useful. Next we have Theme Teleporter II. He is the only magic damage unit that you have until Last Hotel, which is like 2 chapters later, I think. And he is actually worse since he doesn't really have any cool attacks that he gets, and his stats are somehow lower than Last Hotel's. So, I mean, you do kind of need magic damage, but at the same time, very bad. He's going into C tier. Next we have Theme Teleporter III. Theme Teleporter III probably has like the most long-term utility out of any of the theme teleports by far. And in my playthrough of ultimate difficulty, I actually kept him alive until the final boss, and all the other theme teleports I killed him off during Act 1, so I think this is a lot. He isn't the best healer. He's probably one of the like not as good healers, but you do get him at the first chapter of the game, and he is a healer, and healers always help. Also, you need him to recruit Rob, so I'll put him in A tier. He's not super crazy good or anything, but he is the first healer that you get. You get him in chapter 1. You do need to use him since he's the only healer you have until Helio, and he does have utility outside of Act 1, unlike the rest of the theme characters. Next we have Theme Teleporter IV. Theme Teleporter IV is not that good. He has some differences from Theme Teleporter II, since instead of dealing magic, he deals physical damage with a bow, and he also has, I think, a higher avoid, or not avoid, but agility than him, so he can dodge some attacks, but at the same time, he's not that good. He is usable, but again, you're not going to use him after Act 1 since you will get better units, but he is useful at the beginning of the game. He just doesn't have much long-term usage. Next we have Last Hotel. Normally I would put him in like C tier or something since he is technically usable, but he's really bad. But with the sorting units that you have, he is actually really useful, especially during the boss fight against Retail. So I will put him in B tier since he does have some usability outside of Act 1, especially when you get... Actually no, because he can technically... Yeah, I'm gonna put him down in C tier actually, because he can be used longer than Theme Calibur II, but starting with Chapter 12, there's like magic immune enemies for like 5 chapters straight, so you technically can use him in Act 3, but you'll have to re-level him up since he'll be really behind on levels. So I'm gonna put him in C. He is better than the Theme Caliburs, but I don't think he's B tier since he's not usable during most of Act 2. But he is better than the Theme Caliburs. Next we have Damage. How should I rate him? He's surprisingly good. He does really good damage, if you couldn't tell by his name. But he has bad defensive stats, low HP, but at the same time, he's like a better version of Theme Calibur the Force minus his early recruitment and High Avoid. So I'll put him in B tier. He is useful. You probably will use him until like a bit into Act 2, since again you're starting with these units. You gotta take whatever you can, and you will be using him for a bit, so B tier. Next we have Helio. Helio is really good. I already put her really high up in my last tier list, but since she does die in the Aerith route, but the Aerith route isn't as good in this difficulty, which I'll explain later, I will put her in S tier. Because one of the best healers in the game, I still think Relay is better, but one of the best healers in the game, infinite range healing really quickly, multi-range magic, which isn't that useful in Act 2, but she could just heal during Act 2 and then attack during Act 3 and 4, so lots of utility, pretty early join time, and of course you kind of don't want to exclusively rely on this guy for all of your healing, so... And also having multiple healers is always appreciated, especially in Bipole 4. I mean, especially in Ultimate Mode, since, you'll be taking a lot more damage than normal. And ranged units are way better than they usually are, since, ranged damage and physical units. But that mostly applies to Act 1, since most units won't be able to outrange like 5 ranged enemies in Act 3, but still, ranged damage is really good. It might be magic ranged damage, but it's still really good, and unlike Last Hotel, she will actually keep up that EXP through healing, so S tier. Next we have Rob. I'm gonna put Rob in S tier, and this is very different from where I placed him in my other tier list, but let me explain why. So he comes with Bow Plus at base, which has 3 range, and that instantly outranges any basic bow user, which is most ranged units in Act 1, which means he is the only unit that you'll have at that point that can consistently, reliably outrange enemies, which is extremely useful since in Ultimate Mode, enemies will always counterattack first, even on your turn, unless you outrange them. And even though like these 3 technically do outrange sword characters and stuff, usually you could tank those with Proton, and their stats are really bad, but Rob has really good stats, really good range, perfect join time since he joins in the chapter where 3 range, he joins in the act where 3 range is the most useful, and overall just a really good unit. And there's one bad thing about him, and that is that you will not be able to recruit him in Act 2. But again, he is really good stats, and he also has pretty consistent accuracy, so that's always appreciated, especially when you're trying to survive in a difficult game mode like this. Next we have Bladen. Bladen isn't as good in this mode since, you know, one range and he gets countered and stuff. But he still does have medkit, he's still usable, and you probably will use him. So, B tier. Kind of like damaging, you're probably not gonna use him like in like Act 3 or anything, but he is usable and you will probably use him. And he also doesn't lose usability extremely quickly like these three. And unlike Last Hotel, he can be used in Act 2 and he has medkit, so even if he's not attacking, he can still get that EXP. Next we have Rodos. Rodos, not that good. I think I'm gonna have to create a tier between these, because these are units that are like only used in like a few chapters before you throw them away. But this is like, you can use them, but why would you use them above B tier? So I'll just name this like B- /C C+. There we go. Just fix that. So he's going in there. Next we have, I just realized you can't get him because he isn't recruitable, because no code entering is allowed, so he isn't recruitable. Let's go. Next we have Fail, Aerith, and Ver. So the best choice out of these is probably Fail, and there's some differences between all of their routes, especially Fail, Aerith, and actually that's all of them. But there are some pretty big differences between each one of their routes. Fail, for example, like you won't recruit weapons unless you sacrifice Warp, which isn't worth it, so you probably won't recruit weapons even if you choose him, which is one point that goes towards the Aerith route. But one thing that goes against the Aerith route is that she is physical damage until she gets like Fireball, but that's magic damage, which isn't that good. So that's one thing that counts against her route. And then there's the Ver route, and the Ver route you can't recruit weapons either, but then you can also keep Helio, so then there's that thing. So you can keep Helio, but you can't recruit weapons. So I mean, it's slightly different for the Ver route, but I mean, do I even need to say? Actually, I'm just gonna change that to F tier, and then this would be D tier, and then this would be C tier. Okay. And for them, I'll put Fail and S tier because ranged damage, again, it's really useful, and it's physical range damage and it's multi-range damage. I think like Longbow has like 4 range or something, which is going to be really useful. And Aerith is still usable, but not as good, since she won't be able to like solo the game, because you won't be able to level her up as easily because enemies attack first and she has 1 range. And once you do get magic, it's probably not going to be that useful since it's too late, but you do get to recruit, where is he, B, who is really good in this mode since he can take damage, so she's going in A. And let me just change the color of this to be, like, I don't know, there we go. Next we have Wrestles. Wrestles is basically just Aerith but worse and also more difficult recruitment. I mean, leveling him up is just gonna be really difficult since, you know, 1 range, low HP, all of that. He technically is usable, but not really. You can recruit Tab Mark, but even Tab Mark isn't as good, because if you attack and when a one-shot will finish off an enemy, he's gonna take recoil damage, and I mean, he is still really good, but at the same time you have to keep him alive, which is made much more difficult. So he's going to D tier. You can still use him. He's not completely unusable like Ver, because Ver won't even be able to like finish off a 1 HP enemy because enemies attack force in this mode. So again, not that useful, but technically usable, so D tier. Next we have weapons. Weapons, I mean, you have to kill Warp to get him, which is a really big thing that counts against him. He's still pretty good unit, but Warp is just better in every way at that point, so C tier, I guess. He's like, Yeah, I'll put him in C tier. Since he is usable, he's a really good unit, but the cost, dude, that cost is really steep. And also you can't recruit him in the Aerith route if you're doing that for whatever reason. Next we have the best healer in the game, Relay, and I mean, nothing's really changed. He still heals and he still has Congeal, so. And also by the time you get Congeal, it's gonna be Act 3 or 4, and he'll have a lot of EXP from healing during the entirety of Act 2 and the beginning of Act 3, so Congeal is still really good. Next we have Ilb. Ilb is, I mean, he's a healer. You do have to kill, like, a lot of units since he is a replacement unit, but at the same time, healers are really important, and if you have, like, just, like, Rodars alive or something, it's definitely worth sacrificing him to unlock him, and he is important since, you know, healing, and also he does get ranged magic damage really late in the game, so he technically can attack, but he won't be dealing too much damage unless he's using like Hydra or something, and even then he's not that good. So I mean, in terms of attacking, he's not that good, but he does have it, and he is good at healing, so I'll put him in C. If he didn't have the cost of having to sacrifice units, it would be at B or A, but he'll be at C. Next we have Lias. Lias is somehow even worse in this since you can't even level her up because attacking any enemy will instantly get her one shot, so F tier. Next we have someone who's actually usable. So with Fight, what you usually do in normal difficulty is rush up to an enemy and then use medkit on yourself, and then tank the hit and then use medkit on yourself, and that strategy doesn't really change. You're kind of doing the same thing since you will never attack on your own turn with Fight unless it's a really specific situation, and she's still really good and has 5 movement, so actually no, there's also the cost of having to sacrifice your units, but at this point of the game, I mean, I think it's like 8 units or something, 5 or 8. It's higher than what you have when recruiting Ilb, but if you have like a team of like Proton, Wob, Veil, Relay, Helio, and like one other unit, you should be able to recruit her, so the cost isn't really that crazy. Most of the bad units you'll probably kill off, and it definitely is worth killing them off to recruit her, so she's gonna be in B tier. If it wasn't for a steep cost, she would be in A or S. Next we have Refgift. Refgift bad. I mean, he's already bad, but now he's gonna be just taking more damage. He can deal a few hits of damage, but again, not that good. Someone who is surprisingly good in this mode, though, is Egg. Egg is going into A tier because he tanks sniper hits. And taking sniper hits is really good, like even more than in the base game. Because when you tank sniper hits and he's like in the back row, that means that's damage that's not going towards like your healers and stuff. And HP is really important since attacking enemies will always result in your characters taking damage unless it's like Wob or Fail. So very important utility. Also, he can attack. Technically, he won't do much damage, but like if you need to finish off an enemy and he has a bit of health, he can tank that hit and deal that damage. So A tier. Next we have Albon. Albon, oh, he's somehow worse. Like I know I said Lias was worse, but Lias is only like trash against herself. Albon is trash against Proton and against like no. Because if you keep him alive, which is really difficult, but if you somehow keep him alive, you won't recruit the Shadian Etugal squad, and without recruiting them, you can't sacrifice them, and without sacrificing them, you can't get the aura spell, and I'll talk about that later, but the aura spell is really broken in ultimate difficulty. Next we have B. B would be like an A tier, if it weren't for the fact that you have to keep Aerith alive, and keeping Aerith alive means that you don't get Helio and fail. So I'll put him in B tier, since he is a really good tank and deals pretty decent damage. He's not going to be tanking as much hits as, like, say, Egg, but he's going to be dealing way more damage, and overall just a really good unit. It's just that you had to sacrifice 2 good units to recruit him, so yeah. Next we have, this order was switched up, the red Xuir. I'm not gonna look up their names because I'm too lazy and I don't remember them. But the red guy recruits the blue guy, and blue guy recruits orange guy. I think everyone already knows that, but and then there's Xuir, who you get if you don't recruit them. It's worth recruiting them just for the sake of recruiting him, because I mean, he's good. He tanks hits. He has like 3 range with Xuir Beam, which isn't gonna be super broken, but it's still good against like melee units in Act 4. And again, he can tank hits, which is pretty important. So, but they can't really tank hits. He can do like healing, I think, but on their own they're not really that good. But since they do recruit the orange guy, I will put them in D tier. Actually, I'll put them in C tier because he does healing, I think. Let me check. Okay, he does not do healing, but he does have Hydra, which is a pretty decent damage move. And that's not going to be the most helpful, but I do remember him helping out in my playthrough, and I did keep him alive until... I think I did keep him alive for most of the playthrough until like maybe the final chapter. And I do have a recording of my playthrough that I will link in the description, but he is slightly more useful than him, who is a glass cannon melee attacker, and you know, melee attack bad and ultimate difficulty, so ranged moves slightly better, putting him in C tier. And he also recruits this guy. Otherwise I would put him in like F tier, and I would put him in like maybe D tier, but since they do recruit the orange guy, I'll put him 1 tier above. Next we have Xuir. He deals range damage, I think, but he can tank, which is good, but you also don't recruit the orange Xuir, so I'll put him in C tier. He is useful, he can tank stuff. If he didn't have anything counting against him with his recruitment, he'd probably be in like B tier, but I'll count it against him since you don't get to recruit the other guys. And by the other guys, I mean specifically this guy, because the other 2 aren't really that good. Next we have the League. Pretty decent since he can tank hits. He does have 2 range with Axe Throw, I think that's what it's called, Axe Throw, which allows him to counterattack like Orchos and stuff, or at least basic bow Orchos and magic users, which isn't that common that later in the game, but it is possible. And he has medkit, so he can heal himself, and he has really high attack damage, so he can restore a lot of his health using a single heal, and honestly, really good unit, B tier. Next we have Exa. Exa, he could like take 1 hit, but again, he's not usable because he's like dies really quickly and isn't that good. But I did put him in F tier in the last tier list, but just looking at how literally unusable they are, while he can deal like a few hits of damage, I mean, yeah, I'm putting him in D tier. He is technically usable. He is not literally impossible to use like these 3. I mean, you could like medkit the heck out of poor, but that's not really an efficient way of playing, so no. These, like, you literally can't use them, but at least you can technically use them. So, D tier. And now for the good mercenary out of the 3. He has medkit. He doesn't have Axe Throw on base, but he does eventually get healing spells, which aren't really that useful since they're really late, but he does get them. And also he tanks, not as much as him, but he tanks, and he has medkit, so B tier. Also he has Bitter Growth, I think, but he has slightly lower bases and doesn't have Axe Throw, so I'm putting him equal since Bitter Growth, but slightly worse base stuff, so I'll put him in the equal place. Next we have Giamo. Gilmore isn't worth going out of your way to recruit, but if you do recruit him, I mean, he does ranged damage, but he's probably just gonna get like one shot by what was his name, the dude from the Shadian squad, Dale anyways. So I mean, CTO, yeah, he is usable, but you do have to sacrifice some of your units to get him, unless you have like a really low porty. But I was able to beat Chapter 19A without any major deaths, so I mean, CTO. Next we have Box and Noto. You know, they aren't that bad of a unit on their own. Notos is actually really good, but I'm putting them in D tier because you don't want to get them. You don't want to get them because then you're missing out on the Shadian squad, and I'll explain why that's important once I get to them. Okay, so you want to meet them, but you don't want to recruit them in ultimate mode, because if you kill them instead of recruiting them, you get the aura spell, and the aura spell gives Proton like 7 range magic, which is completely absurd, because now Proton can like attack from super far away, he can counterattack from super far away, and he can tank all of those hits because he's like the most defensive unit that you'll get in this playthrough. So I mean, you kind of don't want to use them, so I mean, he's good, but you don't want to get them because you want to sacrifice them. So I'm only putting him 1 tier above, because if you do recruit them, he's gonna be really useful, but at the same time it's way more useful to get the aura spell in this game mode. Next we have Young Pargors. I mean, just from the sheer recruitment of him, I have to put him in D tier. Otherwise he would be like here. He is like more levels of powerful, I think slightly better, but I mean, you're not recruiting him, but if you do recruit him, he is usable. But again, you're not recruiting him because he's Vra, and he's a throw out character. Next we have Omega. Omega's not actually recruitable. I don't know why I kept him down there. Because to recruit, actually wait, never mind, because I was gonna say you need New Game Plus, but then I just remembered that you don't need New Game Plus to get Warp, and you have Warp. So Omega, he's technically usable, but he's really bad. He can like help out with like finishing enemies, but he's not gonna be doing any crazy kills. I mean, you'll mostly just recruit him just to get the game over quicker with ending, because you get to end the game like 2 chapters quickly with his route, but yeah. Next we have Phyto. Phyto can tank, Phyto can heal, he can do a bit of damage too, so C tier. He's not as good as the mercenaries because he doesn't get a ranged move, I think, and also he doesn't deal that much damage, but again, he can heal, not himself, but he can heal, and he can tank, so C tier. Next we have Xuir or something, I'm not gonna remember, but he's really good because he has range damage, like 3 range damage. He can tank, which means he can tank from a slight range, and he can also attack from a slight range and outdo physical opponents. And also I think he has a heal, like a 3 range heal, so I think he can like heal himself. I am gonna have to check that. Okay, I just checked, he does not have 3 ranged heal, it's just medkit, so that makes things a bit simpler. He can use medkit, and he can just straight up heal himself. So that's really useful. He can take, he can heal himself, and he can attack from a slight range, so B tier, very useful character, more useful than Phyto. Next we have, oh god, the god of mediocrity with a high cost. D tier, he is usable, but you have to sacrifice so many units to actually recruit him, and it's not worth it. Next we have Tabmark. Tabmark's really good, but the cost is really high. You don't want to have to keep around this guy alive, especially in ultimate difficulty. And he's slightly worse in ultimate difficulty because he's gonna have to take a hit each time he attacks, unless you like place him out and take the attacks and kill them with the counter hits and stuff. But slightly worse since he has a physical unit. He does have magic, which does help, Wait, actually, okay, no, okay, I just checked. He does not have magic. I got that confused with Aerith. He does not have magic, but he has like Hyper Slash and like God Slash and stuff. But again, one range, really bad. He can like tank a few hits, but he is hurt by the limitations, or not the limitations, but like the restrictions and stuff that you have in ultimate mode. And he still is a pretty decent unit, but he does have a really high cost, so I'll bring him down to D tier. Next we have Weapons, Act 4. I think Act 4 of Weapons is actually really good because he has high enough of accuracy that he can almost land every shot, and most shots that he does land either deal heavy damage or one-shot the enemy, which is really useful, especially when the enemy can't even counterattack because he has infinite range, which is again really useful in ultimate difficulty, so I'm putting him in A tier. Next we have HM. I mean, he's HM. Next we have Kion. Kion can tank a few hits, he can heal and stuff. Only available in the last chapter though, so, but again, he does help. He can heal, he can take a few hits. He's not really gonna be like soloing any enemies or anything, but he does exist and he can be helpful for like half of that chapter before you just rush in with that congeal and overrun one-shot death pepper. So yeah, D tier. And I think that's it. This is my tier list short. Hopefully this is accurate. Let me just look through it. I don't see anything that I obviously got wrong, so yeah, this will be it for this video. Like and subscribe, I guess, if you enjoy, and remember, install Bipole and infinityJKA.edge.io.